Everyone's expecting you. If you know, then well, you know. Do as I say, not as I do. Welcome, friends, you know. Unity in all that we do. It isn't what you know. Just do as you're expected.
Operation Encore is a 501c nonprofit that is helping veterans turn into rock stars every single day. You can learn more about what Operation Encore is doing by going over to their website at www.operationencore.org. That is www.operationencore.org. If you can give them a hand, just click that little donate button or follow all of their social medias and learn exactly what they are doing to change the lives of our veterans every single day. Hey, welcome everybody to Spirits and Stories with your host, Donald Dunn. Today I have got a guy, we got a little bit of stuff in common. You know, I'm pretty sure that by the time we're into this, we're going to talk about some of the same parts of the world that we stomped on. So let's let everybody know that we've got Pete Turner. Pete Turner, his last job was to leave America's camps daily and interactive with the locals to figure out what was going on. Where were we losing, winning, who did? We need to know who was bad, good, both. And let me tell you, man, there's a lot to that. Those sayings. I'm just sitting here saying them and thinking them at the same time about, man, you get about 10 different types of truth when you talk to people over there. But we'll get into it, man. His experience is 70 plus months working in combat zones with over 1,000 missions outside the wire, and became a podcast producer host. He's interviewed incredible people from all walks of life, interviewed Medal of Honor recipients, Nobel Peace Prize winners, Pulitzers, Peabody, Emmy, Grammy, gold medal winners, and a whole list of people. So let's bring on Pete Turner.
Hey man, thanks for having me. That's a great intro.
Yeah, well, you got one heck of a resume, man. Holy cow!
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot to those first little parts of the sentence, man. You know, you're trying to talk to some of those local nationals out there and piecing together whether we're winning or losing. Ooh, you get about 15 different truths over there.
Well, I'll tell you what, and really, so just to be clear, like for everybody listening, I was a counterintelligence agent. So I'm a spy for us, right? And I'm trying to find out what's going on. I've got 4 basic jobs: help the commander win more, help the commander lose less, help the enemy lose more, help the enemy lose less, right? And sometimes I could wrap all those things up in one mission, one piece of information. Sometimes you're just one at a time in it around that little matrix. But that's the basics of my job. And you're right, like there's multiple truths within that, and you're trying to sort out for the boss. Like, hey, where does the boss need to tune his machine, his unit? Where do you apply pressure? Where do you take pressure off? Where do you put in funds? Where do you take funds out? I mean, I don't want to tell the boss what to do, but I want to let the boss know what's working and what's not.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So let's back up a little bit and let's talk about what brought you to the military. How did that come about?
I graduated from college, and it was just a terrible time to find jobs, and I couldn't find anything. And I had one of those conundrums where I didn't have enough experience to get a job, but I couldn't get a job to get any experience. And in my line of work, I was going to try to go to TV radio, and so you start at the smallest market anyhow. And I won't do it for long, but I'll carry cables. I'll work in the van. I'll go into the field, and I just couldn't find a job. And at some point, I'm like, I got to do something. And so I went from never considering it to being in the military in 30 days.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, we kind of come from similar backgrounds. I came in 94, and it was the same situation. I was right out of high school, got married, and I needed what they call dollar bills. And I had a family to take care of, so I couldn't find work either. And so I did the same thing. I came in the military for that reason. my hat's off to all the people that came in after 9/11. You know, they knew what they were getting into. They wanted to fight, and that's why they joined. I just wanted to eat, and that's why I joined. So, but I
Yeah,
did
yeah.
years. I made it a career, so it wasn't a bad gig, that's for sure.
Yeah, I didn't know I was going to join the military. I might have acted differently. I might have gone to ROTC, but it had never occurred to me that that was going to be an option. I had an uncle that was in the military, but most of my family had moved. Actually, I had two uncles that were in the military, but it wasn't a present day-to-day force in my life. So it wasn't something that I even considered it. And oddly enough, so I joined in '94 as well. My younger brother had joined on delayed entry, and we were at MEPS ready to go the same day, just by luck of life. And he ended up having to delay an extra week or something like that. But you know, life does these crazy things. And
Yeah.
so we were on these parallel paths where he was at Marine boot camp and I was in Army basic training, and we were exchanging letters back and forth, which was a riot because we could haze each other with our letters. And boy, did we ever! It was a crazy time, and what a great memory.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you, man. You saying that, writing letters back and forth while you're in basic training, it just made me think of this little scam that all the guys in my basic training was doing. They were writing letters to other people in other sections of basic training, and the way
Yep.
they would reverse the name and the for the sender and that, so they were actually sending it to, you know, themselves and to the other guy, right? And
Right.
they wouldn't
Yeah.
put a stamp on it, and so then they would return it no postage to the correct person that it was supposed to go to. But I was just thinking about, I don't know why, but it just popped in my mind about what the stuff those guys were doing to save. I don't even know what
Yeah.
stamps were back then, probably 15 cents.
Something. Yeah. 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 And you don't have to put your return address, right? You just put nothing on that
Yeah,
upper left-hand corner, and then it goes to the person you want it to get to. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
yeah,
The tricks we all pulled in basic.
yeah, man. So let me ask you, did you stay enlisted, or did you end up going warrant with the position that you was doing?
I stayed enlisted. I was a couple opportunities for me to go. I never warrant officer was an option, but it wasn't an option that I ever got close to getting. There was a couple of times where I was going to try to go OCS, and then there was going to be a direct commissioning. I was in the reserves for a little while, but
Mhm.
I'll just be honest. I was failed by Army leadership, and just in my field, they don't value the people that they get, and so they don't try very hard to keep us,
Yeah,
which is amazing because it's really hard to get someone trained up to be a counterintelligence agent, and that skill set apparently just is just valuable to the big army. And so, but I remember pre-deployment for Bosnia. Our commander's out there, and he's like, I can blister the paint, and talking about how tough he is and how mad he can get and everything. And he also said this deployment would not curtail careers. And so my buddy Brian and I figured out that we could, if we went back to Germany, within 96 hours, complete all of the work that we could not do in theater, which would be Bosnia. We could run around like maniacs and get all that work done, go to medical boards and all that stuff. He had called and done all this work ahead of time. So like everybody was ready for us. Like the minute we dropped on the ground, we would basically have no rest. We would be like this, like a 4-day pass that would
yeah,
suck for us. And
yeah,
our commander said, no. Like, what? And, people were going home for 4-day passes for all kinds of reasons. By the way, I had several 4-day passes that I didn't even get to use. And I said, I'll just use a 4-day pass. Like, well, that's not approved either. And I'm like, well, then why do I have 4-day passes if I can't use one? I'm not trying to get out of working. I worked in a very hard spot. I worked hard all the time. Both my bosses, my NCO and my warrant, were like, hey, we want Pete to become an officer. We think he'd be good. And like, no. And so the stars never fully aligned. It was always an idea. There was people sort of interested in it, but I could never get a leader fully on my side to ensure that the pathway was cleared for me. And it's, as you know, it is awfully tough to do that stuff by yourself if you are the young person, the small rank person in that initiative. It's
yeah,
just, it's impossible if someone's not pulling on the rope with you. And so
yeah.
I never had that person happen.
Yeah, without recommendations and everything else, man, it's tough because especially on the warrant side really looks at who it is that recommended you because it's such a small niche group of people, man. They know everybody, and
Yeah.
so I imagine OTC would be the same way. You've got to have some reputable recommendations, or you're just going to get
Yeah.
thrown in the not considered pile. So
Well,
I
and then when I would think if I'm a lieutenant colonel and one of my counterintelligence agents, by the way, when this happened, our lieutenant colonel was an intel officer, right? So uh, when if a packet for OCS goes up and the captain in my battalion, knowing what I know now, if he kills that packet for two guys who want to go become officers, Paul, I need you in my office right now.
yeah
That's what's going to happen. And Paul's going
yeah
to be like, wait, what? What? And then Paul's going to call back and he's going to be like, Specialist Turner and Specialist Fuller, I need you guys to see you guys. And we're going to get that thing fixed because you're not going to retard careers. Like you can't spare these two E4s for a
yeah
couple of days. I promise the war is going to get won without those guys. So
absolutely.
let's make sure. So yeah, that's and that was kind of the theme though. I don't want to say anything about any other unit, anything else, but wherever I was, the counterintelligence field struggles to lead soldiers. And I'm a hard charger. I'm athletically fit. I was a max PTer. I studied my ass off. I never lost a board I sat in front of.
Yeah.
I was a pretty good soldier in a lot of ways. I had a bit of a bad attitude, but my bad attitude stemmed partly because no one knew how to get in front of me and lead me. And so I would get bounced from section to section about every 3 months, make sure that NCO got a leadership excellent block, and then they'd kick me to the next section. And believe me, I can see that happening,
Yeah.
and they're like, hey, I led Specialist Turner. And I'm like, you didn't, I set up my mock boards, not you.
Yep.
And so that didn't play well in Intel. And again, I have my drawbacks, but I was frustrated because I was trying to excel in a field that you're supposed to try to excel. And no one could tell me how to compete. And all I wanted to do was compete and be great. And it just doesn't work that way in Intel. Apparently, not from my experience.
It really doesn't. I worked real close with our Intel guys while I was with the 160th, but that's really the only unit that I really dealt with them. I mean, any other time you didn't see your Intel guys unless you was in processing or out processing. That's it.
Yeah.
They were just a tight knit group that didn't speak to nobody. They just did their own thing. When I was with the 160th, the guys that I seen, they were all NCOs. So the leadership part, you really couldn't evaluate because they were all E6s. Right. And so it was tough to see, but I could still see it in some way, that they kind of all did their own thing. They weren't their tight knit group like you would see in the motor pool and stuff like that. So I do get that, but obviously you had to be good at your job for them to even be letting you take on the missions to go outside the wire. Not all the Intel guys do that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? So when we were in garrison, it was tough because no one knew. Remember, it's 95, right? We didn't know what we were going to do next, and so I had my face in correspondence courses. I was memorizing all of the board books, and I mean memorizing them, right? So I was investing in getting myself promoted. And for those who don't know, there's a promotion system at this time based upon points. Yep. And I figured the points max out, that kind of locks out promotion at 800 points. And so they give you 798. If you can get to 798, then okay, we'll talk.
Are you ready to experience the power of military community right from the comfort of your living room? Introducing Military United podcast streams, now available on the Roku channel. Get ready to dive into a world of incredible stories, inspiring discussions, and the best entertainment the military community has to offer. With our veteran podcast host, you'll gain insights into the experiences that have shaped our heroes. And that's not all. We've got a lineup of talented veteran musicians playing rock, country, and more. Get ready to rock out with these incredible artists who have served our country and are now ready to entertain you with their soulful tunes. But wait, there's more. We've also got veteran comedians who will have you in stitches with their hilarious and relatable stories. Laughter is the best medicine, and these brave men and women know how to deliver it. So gather your loved ones, grab some popcorn, and prepare for an unforgettable journey into the world of military podcast, music, and comedy. With Military United Podcast Streams now on Roku, you can access all this incredible content with just a few clicks of a button. Military United Podcast Streams on Roku channel. It's time to honor, entertain, and celebrate the incredible men and women who have served our country. Join us today and experience the power of the military community like never before.
So I'm like, well, then that's well do, right? And you got to think, this is how I think, right? I'm going to get 798, and my peers and the people 1 or 2 notches above me look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, all right, and so instead of going, hey, Pete's pretty motivated, let's figure out, let's get him over to Delta selection or and figure out things. They just pushed me aside. I just want to tell a quick story. So we were doing a battalion run, and our battalion was intel people, ops people, and headquarters, everything. And then there was an infantry company, Echo 51st, and they were our rangers, they were our animals. And so we're doing a battalion run, and I've got the guide on, so I'm running around the battalion formation. And you gotta keep in mind, I'm really fit, right? And I go around the front of the formation. We're in Germany, and the track is the asphalt is slick because it's got moss and it's wet. And so I slip and I fall and I spike the guide on the ground. I get up, and the infantry guy passes me, and I'm like, oh fuck no, not a chance. And so I go after him. Now he thinks he's got me, right? Because he's passed me up, and I'm hunting. And so I put that guide on down in 90 degree, and I'm scooching. And his guys are at the back of the formation. They're like, hey, he's coming. And he's like, yeah. And I smoked him. And that poor guy, man, he got destroyed when he got back to battalion. And again, instead of someone from my unit going, hey, Pete, because we were the unit in front of that unit. Instead of someone saying, we saw that was incredible. Not a word. I got yelled at one time. I used to do this thing where we'd go on our little run for PT tests, and I'd finish early, and then I'd run back out, and I'd run in people who I thought would appreciate it. I'd be like, hey, you want me to run in with you? And they'd be like, yes. And so I'd run, and I knew if they wanted me to run just in front of them or just talk with them or whatever it was, I would do that. I got told to not do that. That was a bad thing to do. And I'm like, I don't get you people.
Yeah, I don't either. That is, and I've heard stories of MI units, but I've never been in one. So I've always had just really small little. It's a section, squad of guys. But yeah, I've heard stories when I was at Hunter Army Airfield. There's an intel unit there, and I've heard similar stories to what you're telling. So
yeah,
it is a whole different world. So
I didn't know that though.
Yeah, They
I thought the whole military was like that.
No. I will tell you, I think really the rest of the combat support element is really close, with each other. We kind of rib each other internally, but we all kind of look out for each other. And then you got your combat arm guys that, the same thing. They feel like they're better than us. The infantry calls us pogues, and the airborne calls us legs, and whatever. But at the end of the day, if we were both outside that wire, there is no separation.
Right. Right.
I don't know. I don't know that with the intel guys it would be that same way.
Yeah. Well, and it is something that certain jobs you have to earn that, right? And to be honest, in my job, it's really easy to look sideways at us and be like, because part of my job is getting drunk. Part of my job is laying out in the sun, relaxing for a day because I stayed up 40 hours in a row and I have to have a break. And that doesn't look great if you're a chemical guy going out on a patrol. I say patrol, I mean a convoy from A to B, and then you're just running a route and come back because you're just doing a route. That's it. That's all you get to do. That's got to be frustrating, right? And so we do have to mind our business on the post to make sure that people understand what we deliver, and it's not something that anybody else, especially in my case, it's not something anybody else can do. And so I do have to outwork my peers. And I've always said, the Turner challenge is grab your rucksack, let me know when you get tired, because I'm not gonna, and no one ever can take that challenge up because it's not a real thing. But that's the thing, is like, I outwork everybody because I have to. I don't have the choice. My job is a job that only I can do, and only I should be doing it. And so I got great because I just did it more than everybody else. And instead of becoming an E5, an E6, an E7, a warrant officer, and moving away from the field, I moved kind of laterally, right? I got out. I came back as a reservist, and then I came back as a civilian working on contracts and kind of guiding
Mhm.
counterintelligence people, but they were all green. And I'm like, you guys are gonna get yourself killed. And so I would end up having to go out the wire, that way. And then I
Yeah.
came back as a DA civilian. And so I just managed to stay at the ground level. Now I got promoted in terms of my freedom and my money and rank, if you want to consider DA civilian rank and everything.
Yeah.
But I maintained access to the ground, which is unheard of in my field.
Yeah. Yeah. You are right. I mean, as you grow in that field, you're doing more of the briefing and the taking the information that's given to you and making it make sense for whatever the mission coming up is.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
and that is an important task. Don't get me wrong, because you have to have those elements of checks and balances to make sure that everybody, this is what I'm seeing, and then after he looks at it, yep, that's what I'm seeing, and then it becomes a real thing versus one person
Yeah.
saying, well, this is what I think I see. And so it is an important job. But you are right. As you grow, that's what's expected for you to do, is to
Yeah.
eventually be the head intel guy that's briefing the commander. And
Yeah.
he's not going outside the wire at that point.
Yeah. 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 And one of the things that made my career unique was not only did I develop capacity at the ground level to see things, I also built that same capacity on the inside. And
Mhm.
so when you don't belong to a unit, and if I come up to you, right, and you don't know who I am, and I'm just some dude, right, and I wasn't in the army, I was with the army, but
Yep.
you have to know that you can trust me, and I don't have to do your job. I don't have to do the things you want me to do. And you're like, yeah, even if I was in the army, right? And let's say you're like the sergeant major for that battalion or whatever, and I come
Mhm.
up to you and you're like, yeah, I'll give you quarters. I'm going to put you with these four dudes, and I'm like, nope, can't do that. I work in counterintelligence. I cannot sleep with someone else. What? I'm like, I have regs. I can show them to you. But I'm just telling you right now, like, that doesn't work because it could be that I'm investigating this person. I'd rather be off the camp, going do things and living in my own little hooch right here. But I keep odd hours. I'm a bad roommate, and it's against the law. And just to tell a sergeant major that,
Yeah.
they don't like that. And so I have to figure out how to exist on the camp and maintain trust and respect. And so I wouldn't even work with, this will sound crazy, I wouldn't even work that directly with the two shop because they couldn't keep up with the products that I was putting out. They'd get them, they'd have access to, everybody had access to my stuff, and I would build a big reading list for my reports, but I'd have to get direct access to the commander because he could work at the level I was working at. The work I was doing wasn't for O2s and O3s. It
Mhm.
wasn't for E6s. The work I was producing was for commanders and
Yeah.
people running teams for commanders, not for staff and not for subordinate people who are below staff.
Yep.
And that's hard for people to hear that. And so I didn't talk to them because I liaised with them, but I didn't say, I didn't take direction from them. Hey, Pete, tell me how many schools are in that valley. And I would say, send a question through the channels. And then I would never answer it. I would say to who's the partner there? I had to be, oh, that's Sergeant Holton. Okay, well, have Sergeant Holton ask his partner. Well, Sergeant Holton's the guy asking the question. And I'm like, well, then Sergeant Holton should be asking his partner because that guy's an Afghan. He'll tell you the answer before I can. I'm not going to take my time to go answer a question that we should already know the answer to from 20 years back.
Yeah. Yeah. They didn't build a new school, so it's
Nope.
been the same.
Right. Yeah.
There may
Yeah.
be one
And
left,
yeah.
but there'll never be
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, right. Who's at the school? What lesson plan are they teaching? How many
Yeah.
kids have graduated? Have you found those kids? Those questions. I'll go out and get you those questions. As a matter of fact, I'll do that self-tasking. I'm like, you want to find out about schools? Give me 2 weeks. I'll teach you things about schools you're not going to know about because I know the questions to ask. I've been around. This,
Yeah.
this is like your second or third rodeo. I own a rodeo. I'll be back. And then I would give the commander something like, hey, here's on schools. And I write a report on schools, right? And I'd come back and be like, this is what schools look like right now. Are you winning or losing? You decide. Here you go, man. And I'd give it to him, and he'd be like, wait, you went out to these schools without letting everybody know that you're going out to the schools? And I'm like, you can't let them know you're coming, man, because then they perform the school function. So yeah, I talked to the Ministry of Education. Yeah, I talked to the elders. Yeah, they took me out to their own schools where they were at, and I looked at who was there. Yes, I got to see their curriculum that they teach. No, it's not written down. Nobody else gets that. Nobody else gets that kind of information and access, right? But I do. That's my job.
Yeah, and a lot of psyops is in that same category. They
Right.
do a lot of things that just look like you're just fucking off. You're not doing
Yeah.
nothing. But
Right.
what you people fail to realize is kids will say things that they don't even know is wrong, and they're giving
Yeah.
you information. And so you may see soldiers playing with kids, but that's more about getting trust and getting them talking and listening to them. Have you seen any big trucks come through here? Yeah,
Sure.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
have you seen people with guns come through here? Just asking vague questions that they don't understand, that they're
Yeah.
giving information. But on the outside, if you're looking in at that, it just looks like you're a soldier playing with
Oh,
kids and taking some time off. And so
yeah.
the same thing here, with you talking to schools. Well, somebody may say, well, why is that important? Well,
Yeah.
one, are these weapons caches or are they schools?
Sure.
Are kids coming up missing, just like you said, or is this a place where they're trafficking kids? Are they killing kids that are female instead of male? I mean, is the Taliban at this point recruiting from these schools? There's a lot of stuff that you can gather from
Yeah.
those types of things that you would never think of that a commander would need to know.
Yeah.
And so I do get that stuff, man.
Take the threat part out of all of that too, right? Because I wouldn't even focus on threat because no one wants to talk to that guy, right? Like the
Yeah.
worst way to find out where the bombs are is to walk around going, where are the bombs? Where are the bombs? Right? Like you can't do that. And so I would build trust with these elders, with these
Yep.
bosses, with these dads. And I would say, I'm desperate to learn how your kids are doing in school, but I don't want the Americans to be around because I want to see how you guys do it, And they're like, oh yeah, you know what? No one's ever asked us that. Ding, rich ground. And then I don't worry about the Taliban, but I do worry about where the religion is. And if there's religion, there's Taliban, right? And so I can intuit certain things. And so I'm looking between these seams and I'm getting access to things that no one else has access to because I know what to look for, right?
Yep.
And so I come back and I've got this comprehensive report on schools that took me a couple of weeks to do. And I'm just talking one little region, right? I can go replicate that somewhere else and see if it's still true. But what I'm doing is, and let's let everybody understand, we can look at threat, and I'm always worried about trying to prevent something, but everybody's focused on threat. So I can push all the threat stuff over to Sergeant Stalker. Hey, Sergeant Stalker, that guy over there, he's the guy you talk to about bombs and stuff. Let Sergeant Stalker have that win. I want to talk about the other things because the commander is absolutely worried about hospitals, schools, all these other things that are part of his mission because he's got to legitimize the government. Can I find legitimacy in the government? No. Okay. Are you worried about that, boss? Yes, I am. And so I'm still going to find the dangerous stuff, but I'm also finding the day-to-day stuff that we have to find so that the colonel can tweak his knobs and say, hey, the ag team is no longer working in my section and I'm kicking them out, which has happened before when the colonel's like, these guys are causing me to go backwards. They're out, and then boom, kicks them off the camp, right? So these are the kind of things I'm looking for in schools and other small things that helps. And then how do you find the Taliban within that? Again, you're looking for religion, right? And so when the army is not around and the religion starts to show up, I know because I'm working in an area where the Taliban starts, I know that that's the Taliban, right? And so I'm trying to understand, at least that's like the default assumption. You can suss that out more, but I don't need to do that. I just need to say, and then the religious elders are there. Let's understand what that means. And then you go out from there and you expand that circle out. Either way, the commander is mostly focused on, are these schools functional? Pete says no. Can we find proof that they are functional? Yeah, we'll plan an event and we'll go out and we'll go to the schools. We'll show Pete, we'll show he's wrong. And I'm like, great, I'll go on that patrol. And then I'm going to go back to that same school 2 weeks later, unannounced, with an elder, and we're going to go to that school and see what's there. And guess what's going to happen? Guess what happens, Don?
It's going to be different.
There's no, yeah, yeah. And then the boss rubs his head, looks around the room, he rubs his head, and he tries not to yell at everybody. And he goes, the report that you guys gave me when you did your op talked about all these people in school. 2 weeks later, Turner goes out. These key, and he's like, how do I win this game? And so when you talk about all these different truths, it happens inside the camp too, man. It happens inside the camp. We lie to ourselves all the time, and we hate it. We hate to hear the truth.
Yeah. And that is a sad fact too, because a lot of that intel becomes very important on missions. What type of cover is there? Is it a wooded area? Is it a desolate area? You can't always rely on just imaging. You have to have people that have seen it and know about it. I mean, prime example was the Lone Survivor show. They were expecting to be having perfect cover so they could watch that village in that area to see if the reports was true that one guy was coming there. And when they got up there, there was no cover. I mean, it was pretty desolate, to the point where a goat walker walked up on them, So it is, those little details can make or break a mission. And again, not even necessarily threat missions, rebuilding of towns, legitimacy as far as with the government. Are these Humvees that we gave them, are they being sold out the back door with all the parts that we're giving them? I seen that in Iraq all the time. Part of my last deployment was to teach the Iraqis how logistics work. When you got two units that both need an engine, which person gets the priority? How do you figure that out? And I'm going to tell you, it was like clockwork, man. That situation would happen. That engine would get on the back of a truck, and some reason it would never make it to the unit that really needed it. It went to the unit that paid the most money. And those base commanders pocketed every bit of it. And we just kept giving them more shit. And so,
it's so true. And then here's the other end of it, right? Like, you write that report, and then Pete gets it, and it's like, let me go look at the other side of this thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so I go talk to those commanders, and then I'll get there and be like, oh, by the way, these guys haven't received their budget in 6 months. And so when these guys say this, and look, this is what they're telling me, right? So this gives us more information. It's not proof, but this is the information. So they're saying they haven't been given their budget in 6 months. This is just the next part of the quest. And so I'm like, who do I go talk to now, right? If that's true. So I go talk to somebody else who runs that part of, like, oh yeah, no, we turned their budget off. The Iraqis turned that off 6 months ago because of whatever thing. And you're like, well, okay, how are they supposed to feed themselves? We don't care. And so you see these problems that happen. So this is 100% true story. And it goes what you're talking about. So we're in Afghanistan, just super remote, right? And our Afghan police get into a firefight, and so they let a bunch of rounds go down range. And so I'm like, hey, chief of police, just a young guy, right? I'm like, how do you get more rounds? You guys spent a ton of stuff. I don't see a stockpile of rounds. What are you going to do? He's like, oh, no, it's no problem. I'll put in a request. And then a couple of weeks later, the rounds will come here. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to follow that request. And so I follow it up the chain. Mm-hmm. It's not going to, and I'll make this long story short, it's not going to surprise you to find out that an American E7 killed that request, like 3 echelons up. And I'm asking him, and I'm like, why did you kill this? Remember, I'm working in Taliban country, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, why did you kill this request? Oh, that guy's tied to the Taliban. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, this is Taliban country. Like, everybody here is tied to the Taliban. You have to accept some level of, it's not your job to be the government, man. This guy out there is patrolling with us every day. Maybe he is Taliban, maybe, but he also, by the way, got blown up by the Taliban, a couple months later, right? So, we don't know how this stuff works, but I do know this guy tried to put a request in and didn't get his stuff, and an American turned that request off.
Have you ever wondered how you can help out the show? Well, that is very simple. You can help us out by going to www.twodrunkdudesinAgunroom.com. That is www.twodrunkdudesinAgunroom.com. There's many ways that you can help us by listening to the show, supporting the show, liking, sharing, and everything else that comes along with social media. But one of our biggest goals is to help build the nonprofit Heroes Voice Media Foundation. This is a foundation that has decided to start celebrating courage and amplifying heroes. Find your voice with Heroes Voice Media Foundation.
Like that kills the government, right? So the government can't trust the government to work. And so, yeah, man, they do sell engines off the backs of trucks. And I'm not justifying bad behavior here, but we have to understand, like, when we come and bring a system that we think is going to work, and we don't stay long enough to understand how the system works when we apply it, then it's on us, all of us, to go, we failed these people. You know, these I always tell like I'm hard on the generals and the admirals. You all are old for your career, but then again, so are we. You know, like we did not do the job of establishing these systems that we said we were going to do, because we didn't like the hard bad news of these captains and colonels and majors aren't being provisioned. Can I tell you another story that kind of illustrates that?
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm in remote Baghdad province out in the farm country, right?
Mhm.
And we're trying to get rule of law established. So I'm looking into these things. And so there's this young police lieutenant, Iraqi, and he's out by the river just north of where like it stops being Baghdad province and starts being Diyala province. And I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, well, you know, a lot of the men have left this region and they won't come back. And if they do come back, they don't sleep in their homes, they sleep in ditches. And so it's really hard for them. And I'm trying to get them to calm down and trust things and everything else. And I'm like, well, what's one of the problems? He's like, well, you guys keep coming and arresting them. And I'm like, well, why are they arresting them? Well, they're bad guys, you know? And I'm like, are they bad guys? He's like, you know, some are, some aren't. And I'm like, okay, well, what's going on? He's like, well, the family comes to me after they've been arrested and there's no warrant, there's no due process. So I don't have a lot of answers for them. So they don't trust me and I really can't fix their problem because I'm just a young lieutenant. You know, and I'm kind of translating his whole story. And so I write this report and I'm like, hey, if we're going to have rule of law, we have to like actually serve warrants, right? And so this goes up. My commander's like, he's hot. He's like, yeah, damn it, kid, like, quit doing these jumps across the provincial border and snatching up citizens because the guy I'm partnered with is trying to, and I think we're making progress. I can't have these other things hemming me up, right? I'm trying to make the government work here. And so, like, I don't know, like a week later, for the whole process works, right? They come and they snatch a guy and they serve the warrant. You know how they served it? And again, these are Americans working with other special Iraqi operators. They take a knife and they go boom into the kitchen table with the warrant attached to it. And like that stuff right there is what, and there's no commander that's like, that's what I want to have happen. There's no commander like that, right? And so these problems have nothing to do with threat and everything to do with failure. And we have to like step back and go, that ain't working, man. That ain't working. Maybe that guy's a bad guy. Maybe he needs to go to jail. But that is still not how you do that. Like you don't get mad at me because you guys weren't doing your job.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that some of that comes from the fact that on the Army side anyways, because I can't speak for the other branches, but on the Army side, I know when the wars get to that point where we're now in the rebuilding stage versus the kicking in doors. And I've been deployed enough to know you see those changes. We go from kicking doors in to cordon knock and knocking on doors and giving them time to hide our weapons. And then we play hide and seek and try to find it.
Yeah.
And when the war turns that and the ROEs start getting to be extreme where now you can't return fire unless you have permissions and all that stuff, I think the soldiers, the guys on the ground lose interest at that point because we're not builders and we're not, you know, we're the animals that are coming through and just tearing shit down. And I don't think that some of the commands when they get over there and they find that that's their mission, they're in the rebuilding stage, really want to be there to rebuild. They occupy ground and time, and they don't really care if the mission was successful. As long as they did what they were told to do and it looked like they were attempting,
Yeah.
it was now a waiting game until they finally pulled everybody out.
Yeah.
That's how I felt about it, because I did see a
Yeah.
lot of these same things. Nobody really cared if the Iraqis could do logistics.
Right.
Realistically, the Iraqis we were teaching didn't want to learn from us either. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
there was a lot of times we'd have to go up there to give classes on the Humvees and stuff that they had, and they would literally do the minimum required. They would put one guy over there that didn't speak any English, and
Yep.
everything I said would have to go through an interpreter who was not mechanically inclined. And what they call one part and what I call one part is, and literally that guy was sitting there going, "I'm only here because if I'm not, they'll shoot me," you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's on both sides in that aspect, but they don't want the supplies to stop coming, so they do the bare necessities to keep that part going. And we don't want to be considered as we failed as far as we didn't do our job, so we do the bare necessities to say we're rebuilding. But I
Yeah.
don't I don't think anything was rebuilt in Afghanistan.
Yeah. That there's a lot of truth in what you said, but there's also a lot of challenge that I would push back. I totally agree. We suck at the ramping down and the ramping up of kinetic activities. And sometimes these things are going on simultaneously.
Yep.
Sometimes I'm collecting intel, and I've done this during firefights where like I'm getting hit in the face with pieces of building that are being shot, and I'm not going to stop my meeting. And oddly enough, neither did the dude I was talking to. We were both like, this is normal. And by the way, this didn't occur to me until maybe like 2 years ago. And I'm like, oh my God, I had a source meet during a firefight. And we were both like, we were safe. But so again, this is the complexity, right? This is the complexity that we have to get through. And it's not easy, right? So anyhow, I guess the thing I want to say is when we go somewhere, we hold the responsibility of being the professional element. And because we refuse to stay long enough to develop language capacity to see through that mission, we here's what Pete sees, right? Because units will rotate over the top of me, rotate over the top of me, rotate over the top of me. And so I'll just use one of the dumbest things that I would ever see is unless the sergeant major was around, nobody would ever do this. But when the sergeant major came around, pre-patrol sand table briefings, right? And like the Afghans, the Iraq, they all knew that. Nobody wants to do that because for the most part, we already know the terrain, right? And but when the sergeant major came around, we would do that. Or like curved line distance on a map, we would teach the Iraqis this, right? We don't use that skill ever. I've never been on a patrol when someone legitimately did curved line distance on a map, but we teach this skill all the time. And so the next unit would be like, have you guys ever heard of curved line distance on a map? And the Iraqis are like, oh my God. So they're eye rolling us because we don't, not only do we have 20 individual wars, we have total amnesia that anyone else has ever been there. And so we don't look in the slide deck. We don't have continuity with, like, there's no accountability. Like, hey, Colonel Dunn, how come you guys did the exact same lesson plan that the last unit did? Why did you guys not advance the ball, right? There's no accountability that way. And so I get that we don't want to stay there. But that's on us. That's on our generals that didn't understand that you can't just do things 1 year at a time. You can't have complete unit amnesia. You should send people back to the same region so that they can develop language capacity, so they can develop relationships, and you can inch the ball forward. Sometimes, maybe, right? And the other thing is the second commanders say, we cannot take that mission on because we are not capable of doing that, I will be glad to say, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. But what commanders like they all want to be Teddy Roosevelt. Like, let's just get some horses. Let's get to the front of the line on the ship. Let's get off this ship as fast as we can. I don't care what the mission is. We're going to do it. That is their attitude. That's the way they're bred. That's the way they're trained. And so they do want to do governance. So I get what you're saying, man. Smash things, shoot people, take over houses. But then it's like, now what? And State Department doesn't want to do that job. They're terrified to not have salsa night, for crying out loud. They lose their minds if they, don't have that whole thing, right? So I don't know what the answer is, but I know what the reality is that we don't take that mission seriously like we actually want to accomplish it. We'll lie to ourselves and say that we do. But that's what made my job so interesting was I'm like, hey, so this is just another story. So we were like, talk about the rehab, the radio in a box. And I would go, and this is where I learned the layers of experience. So I wouldn't go to the captain because the captains couldn't get this, but I would go to the majors and I would say, the boss can do whatever he wants. This is your guys' dance. I've been in this area for a long time. All I'm saying is, I just went to SharePoint. It took me 4 minutes, and I pulled out the last 4 units rehab slides. Here they are. I'd given to them. Whatever we're going to do, let's just understand this is the 5th attempt in the last 5 years. What do you think? And then the major goes, right. Because he's got enough experience because he has deployed before. And he goes, we're not just going to do rehab. We're going to figure out how to do this better. Pete, what do you think? And now we're having a conversation where I can it's not my job to tell the staff what to do, but like, I don't know. And then attaching to the radio in a box thing, we'll see I learned from watching how the unit communicates with itself. And so there's the electronics warfare officer, and he's talking about the capability of the rehab. We have 4 rehabs in the region. There's a circle, and they broadcast on this thing, and we put out all the approved messages, sir, and it's working just fine, right? And I'm like, that is all bullshit.
Absolutely.
And so I'll go out. Guess what I do? I check, and I talk to people, and I find out what they think about the radio, and I do PsyOps' job because they don't do it. And so I go out and I find all these things out, and I kind of map the area. It's just very informally. I don't got to do much. I just have to disprove the false narrative, right? Because that's the commander losing, and he doesn't know. And then, and you know how this goes down. The EWO is almost always a captain at the battalion level or brigade level. And so I go to the EWO, and I'm like, hey, I have some bad news coming down the pipe. I don't want you to get blindsided by this because I'm not a dick. So here's what I'm going to, oh, you don't want to listen to me. Okay, great. I'm going to give you one more chance. I am going to brief this. This is my slide. And right after you say that, I'm going to go, and then I'm going to smash what you're going to say. I tried to communicate because I don't want to do this in the open. But that guy, Pete, who knows who he is? F that guy. And so you know what happens next. He briefs his stuff. He does his standard with the hatchet hand. And I'm like, sir, yeah, I've gone out and checked that. There is no rehab in location 2. There is no rehab in location 4. I've checked 3 different radios, the known channels that we broadcast on. It's not there. By the way, all of the known broadcasting isn't relevant when we find it. The farmers are like, that's city folks, we're country folks. So none of that messaging relates to them. It's not working. So not where it does work, it's not working. And where you think it works, it's gone. That radio does not exist. I went to the physical locations, no radio there. And then the boss is like, doot, doot. What's in his mind? And then the EWO, like the spell is broken, and he's like, oh my God, that dude, he said he was going to do this to me. Like I'm a magician. And I'm like, voila, and I'm like, I told you I was going to do this. I begged you to let me help you. And you told me to F off. And so I F'd off. And now you have to deal with the boss losing his mind mad. And so these are the responsibilities that we all hold as a professional organization. And if we refuse to do it, my job's easy. I'm just going to go, hey, we're not being professional here. We're not being professional here. We're not being professional there. I'll go find the enemy, but maybe we could just start being professional and either say we suck and raise our hand and say we need help, or say we're not going to do that and kick people out, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But we can't just say that we're doing something and not do it.
Yeah. No, you are absolutely right. I mean, you would think that the Kurds would not want to do anything else with this again, because I mean, this is literally like the 2nd or 3rd time that we have just.
Oh my God! Yeah.
So yeah. I agree. And the other thing too, I think we also need to accept. We need to accept that America doesn't work everywhere. What works here is not going to work in a place that they've never seen anything like this. Sure. Afghanistan is a prime example. They don't have a governmental law. The Taliban ran how the government was in cities. But when you got out of those cities and you got into villages, they all had their own rules and laws.
Yeah.
So how do you take a democracy and try to unify probably 10 times the amount of states that we have with people that don't even want to talk to each other? They all have different beliefs, and we're going to try to force this voting system that it's kind of questionable of whether it even works in America anymore. So I think at the end of the day, we have to accept that fact that we're not going to make America over there. We need to figure out what they need and how to help them, and that would probably help out tremendously.
My Wi-Fi bounced on me. Ask me that question again real fast, and I'll
Okay.
answer it for you.
I was going to say, I think one of the problems is that we try to take and make America everywhere we go,
Right,
and
right.
and we need to kind of get to that point where we evaluate what they had and what they
Yeah,
need, not what we have and what we're going to give you.
yeah,
Because look, I mean, look how many soldiers lost a shit ton of money because of how many times we implemented a government in Iraq and they made a new currency. And then Private Joe says, man, I'm going to buy 10 million of this money. And all it has to do is go up to be worth 1 cent. And I'm going to be a millionaire. And the
yeah,
next, you
yeah,
know, we
yeah.
put a new guy in office because that last guy didn't want to play the way we wanted him.
Oh boy.
And
Yeah.
then new currency gets made again, you know?
This is the one of the biggest things. This is one of the things I'm trying to fix with my nonprofit called the Ground Truth Center, groundtruthcenter.org.
Mhm.
Close these gaps, right? And the ground truth guys who go out, guys like me who've been shot at, who have to like talk the policy to the person we're trying to help. The guys like you are like, here's how logistics works, right? Guys who work with the Kurds and be like, I promise we're not going to turn our backs on you again for the third or fourth, right? All of us guys. Because look, when I talked to the governor of the province, the district within Baghdad province where I was working at, and he's like, Pete, you're leaving? Because I was the one that told him, like, hey, no shit, we're leaving. We're leaving. Like, he's like, yeah, I know at some point. And I'm like, no. I mean, like, in 6 weeks, really too. And he's like, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, what do you need to make this thing run? Because we are leaving. And he had no clue that we are leaving. And he's like, Pete, they're going to kill me if you leave. And I'm like, I can't help you with that. I can only get you whatever you think you might need. And I can't even get you that. All I can try to do is help you, you know?
Yep.
That dude got killed. He got smoked. Guess who owns that? Not the politician, not the legislator, not even the generals. I do. I own that. That guy belongs to me. He's in my heart, and he gives me the PTSD because someone didn't have the guts to give that guy a generator and a bunch of fuel, or even just get out of Iraq money. You know, like, look, that guy got smoked. You know, we told him we were going to be there, and we left.
Yep.
So, you know, we have a responsibility when we go to these places. If we're going to go, we've got to do a better job at being there. And it can't be that we do it how we've done it, because it doesn't work, whether you're in Afghanistan or not. And you made a great point talking about, we can't bring the problem and the solution in a kit and just apply it. Boom, you need rule of law. They have rule of law. They do deal with murder there. We may not like it, but it's theirs. And so you have to build a special kind of soldier for sure, right? This is not motor pool soldier work. They have their own job and they're great at that, but they shouldn't have to do this. And it's not about doing push-ups. I love, like, when someone's like, you know, you got to have a special soldier. I'm like, ask me how many push-ups I've done in combat. So I've been shot at a lot. I've done 0 push-ups in combat, you know? So yes, you need to be physically fit. I'm an athletic dude and all that kind of stuff, but it's not about push-ups. It's about understanding how to use their culture to your advantage. If I can accomplish the boss's goal on their cultural path, which includes the Taliban, then damn it, let's do it. Did we just establish a school, and do we call it the Mullah Omar School of Girls? You know, like, when we get in trouble for them burning the Quran, we need to come back and say, every time the Taliban burns a school, they're burning the Quran. We learned it from you guys. And just throw it right in their face. When we bring books to school kids, we got the compliments of Jaish Almighty. Here you go, right? And just like go to the neighborhood, like, we want to work with you guys to help make kids smarter, you know, whatever it is. How do you guys want to do this? One of the biggest things I learned was, whatever their path is, even if it's ugly and nasty, it's on us to work with that path first and then nudge that path where we think we can improve it for them. But if we always do our thing, it'll never work.
It won't. No, I mean, look, we're now to the point of the exact definition of insane.
Insanity. Yeah.
It's because we keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if that's even true anymore. I don't even know if they really expect a different outcome. It's about giving them enough to tell the American people, look what we're doing for these guys. That's
Yeah.
really what it's about.
Yeah.
Because once this little briefing happens in Congress about the truth about how we left Afghanistan, not the media story, the truth about how we had snipers that could have prevented that bomb from going off, how we had commanders refusing to allow us to shoot, how there
Right.
was government and upper leaders meeting with the Taliban in front, handing them a random suitcase where we assumed there was money in there. And now all of a sudden we can no longer do anything to the Taliban and they're going to leave us alone. But yet
Yeah.
all these soldiers had to sit there and watch them execute people in front of them, have them
Yeah.
on their knees and just walk down the line and just trying to instigate something so they could go back to fighting. And
Yeah.
I know all this because of the podcast, the Sean Ryan show, and that soldier that he had on there.
Yeah.
He's now missing, I think it's his right arm and right leg, and had 150 ball bearings hit him. And the truth is coming out.
Yeah.
So the whole story is what I'm getting at is that what we get told here isn't necessarily the truth,
Yeah.
and what's happening over there is also not necessarily the truth.
Yeah.
So
No, there's a lot of that non-truth going on,
Yeah.
units that go there that are not prepared for the fight at hand is the norm.
yeah,
Every unit that I would get there, they would all come with the same basic battle plan. And so I knew I'd have to shut down operations for me because they couldn't even see me. Like every colonel would try to pass me to the next colonel,
mhm,
but the unit couldn't even understand me until 3 to 4 weeks later, but really like 6. And you think about what a significant chunk of a 52-week deployment that is,
yeah,
they're just babies at that point. And they would all like, we will, and I'm just going to use like the standard Afghan thing. We will push the Taliban to the south. We will encircle them. And I'm like, and what? And what? Go to a courthouse and negotiate terms, have them stack arms, and you'll play some drums. Like, this isn't 200 years ago. There's no Clausewitz here.
yeah,
By the way, you can't do that because they don't want to do that. They're not going to allow you to do that. Your vehicles won't go south. You're going to get, it's the winter. You're going, and I swear to God, this is true. This is a professional infantry unit. They thought they were going to do that. I saw their battle plan, and they turned and they went south off of the main road, and they stopped. And I told them, like, you guys are going to lose where the road is because it's not marked. Your vehicles are old and tired because they've been here for a long time. And then someone's going to have to go pee because you're going to be out there for 3 hours longer than you thought before you've even started. And you got people outside and they're peeing, and you're not even near the road. You know where you're at, but you're not anywhere near the road. And then a vehicle is going to break, and you're going to turn around, you're going to come back, and you haven't done anything. The Taliban doesn't show up dead here any day of the week without something getting lucky. So don't talk to me about destroying the Taliban. You're not going to do it. And you can't make the government show up. So
Yeah.
what can you do? And I'm pretty hard on commanders because that's your job. Either make the government show up or make the Taliban go away. You can't do either one. Guess who the chump is?
yep. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of history in that country of how many militaries thought they were going to take over Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And we were just another group that lost. I mean, I hate
And I'm
to
not
say
saying it's impossible, but we didn't prepare for the fight that was there. We didn't prepare our people to be
No.
ready for it. We thought they were going to get into all these different kinds of. I spent so much time doing, like, I had more deployments than the people training me, and they're like, you have to have all your kit on. I'm like, man, I don't have to have. I'm going to patrol more than all of you guys. I don't need any more weight on my body. I don't have to acclimate to my fucking body armor. First sergeant, I appreciate you. You're a badass, but I've got more combat patrols than you do. I don't need any more weight on my body. I'm still recovering from the last time I was here. I know my job. I need to qualify to get out of here. How do we get that done?
Yeah.
But no, I'd go out and do the same grenade drills. I'm not going to throw any grenades. I'm a goddamn spy. not throwing any grenades. Come on.
But you get a badge, man. You get a badge.
We did a World War II into the bunker.
Yeah.
I swear to God, we did that drill. And I'm like, are you serious? Are we doing? I mean, look, I'm all about it. Lots of good Army training. Yeah, but it's not anything to do with what we're going to do. Do you think we're going to go fight the Taliban in bunkers?
No. No, it was a very urban war.
Yeah, yeah. And that's if they showed up to fight.
Right.
Most part, they didn't want to show up to fight, you know. Anyhow, I mean, and I get riled up about this stuff because we know better. And we have all these lessons learned places, and you know, the call and cigar, but we're like, oh, we're just not going to fight that fight. We're going to go fight the Russians, and even then, we don't fight the Russians. We pay someone else to do it. Yep. And so, what are we doing? What are we doing? And that's the part that frustrates me, and that's why I want to try to like get us to make less mistakes, get more things right, prioritize things better, try to stop creating so much corruption. Don't bring $80 billion to a fight. Bring some intellect, bring some tools that help. But if you corrupt everything, then there's going to be corruption.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're talking about people that are doing what they got to do to survive. You know, when there's an American guy with a weapon standing in front of an Afghani, he loves America. The moment a Taliban guy with a weapon is standing in front of him, he loves the Taliban. And I don't blame them. You know, they just want to live. And so it is hard to try to fully get somebody on your side, because they do know at some point we're going to leave. And if we don't win, then they're stuck with what's left. And it's not going to be pretty.
And then as soon as you get used to that American guy, after a while, you're like, that guy's leaving. And he's going to tell me he's leaving, maybe give me a parting gift. And then the next dummy's going to come in. And look, I got sick of it. I got sick of that. The Army, like, who are you? What are you doing here? And I'm like, well, I'm here to help you. I'm really good at my job. And I would tell them in the future, I'm like, you're not going to understand me. You're going to put me under that captain over there. And that's not where I belong. I belong talking directly to the boss. You're not going to believe me now, but here's what's going to happen. And then in 6 weeks, you're going to say to me, Pete, you're invaluable to us. We'd like you to talk directly to the boss. We could skip all that. We could start there, but you won't. And so, you know, and we would go through the process and it'd be like, hey, look at that. I'm talking to the boss directly now.
Yep.
And we just don't, we just never prepared for the fight at hand. And we refuse to learn those lessons. We refuse to adapt, and we're terrified to change that fight. And so we're just not going to win it.
Yep. Well, brother, I want to dig a little bit into your podcast, man. So
please.
Or your YouTube channel. I don't know if you call it a podcast. But how did that come about? I know we was talking before the show, and you had some other host on there with you. But what made you get into it?
Well, I had all these stories. I had all these experiences, and obviously, I asked a lot of questions, with my job, and I'm like, there's things to tell, because people don't understand how challenging this all is. I'm hard on us, right? Because we're professional and we go out and we do hard things, and so I don't mind being hard. But I also love who we are. I also love how professional we want to be. And one of the biggest things I wanted to communicate was just how smart military people are, and the brilliance in a staff room, right? And so I wanted to share all these stories. Like, we get this stuff wrong, and it's dumb while we get it wrong. And there are really smart people trying to get this right, and they're desperate to get it right, and they read all of the books to get it right. And so don't be too hard on them, because I can be hard on them because I failed too. But we all got to realize this is really tough stuff. And so I wanted to tell these stories, and then also meet other people and not just live in the war world. And I just started gathering people and gathering guests, and we've had an amazing run. It's over 10 years and 2,000 episodes later.
Wow.
And it just blows my mind. I know, it blows my mind. And it's the biggest thing I've ever built in my life.
That's awesome, man.
Operation Encore is a 501c nonprofit that is helping veterans turn into rock stars every single day. You can learn more about what Operation Encore is doing by going over to their website at www.operationencore.org. That is www.operationencore.org.
If you can give them a hand, just click that little donate button or follow all of their social medias and learn exactly what they are doing to change the lives of our veterans every single day. And I'll be honest, you're doing it on probably the hardest platform to break down. YouTube
Yeah.
is not an easy platform to get
Yeah.
subscribers and build a following.
Yeah.
You know, I tell everybody this story because I did the same thing. I started my podcast and I made sure I went to YouTube and everything else. And I'm like, I'm putting out all this great information, man. I'm helping veterans. I'm doing this great stuff. And then I come across this guy called the Sleeping Streamer. And he has 30,000 followers on YouTube. And all he does is hit record, gets in bed, and goes to sleep.
Yeah.
There's a guy that sleeps and says nothing and has thousands of percentage more followers than I probably will ever have. And I'm like, that is a kick in the nuts. So my hat's off to you, brother, for
I get kicked in the nuts all the time too, man. I will tell you, I do this thing and I figured out why and how and all that kind of stuff. But my opportunities come from the show, and the ability to do amazing things come from the show, because you're right. YouTube will step on my air hose in a second, and it's not political. It's just their business model. Right.
Yep.
And so they are unable to help my show thrive. And you can right now search for my name and I probably won't be the first thing that comes up on YouTube. And you think about that. I can put the exact name, like combination, like I can put your name, my name, Break It Down Show, right? The 3 keys for what I'm looking for, because we do an episode together, right? And my show won't come up. It'll be something about like, track and field, right? And I'm like, you guys are purposefully bad at this, right? Is that what it is? So you're right about that. But I will say, here's the thing. When you have a show and you've done as many things as I have, I use the show like I did when I was a spy. So I built a network. I know a ton of people, and I try to bring value to every relationship and every interaction. Like, I think I've done a good job, being excited and at least being a good guest, right? And hopefully we'll be able to do more things in the future. I mean, have you on my show and that kind of thing. And so we'll exchange value. And over time, all these little things build up. And look, even if my show doesn't become a hit, that's fine. I wasn't a famous person to begin with, but I know people that do amazing things, and I get to do amazing things with these people because I've built this show. I've built this body of work, and my show has this weight to it. It's bigger than me now.
Yep.
And I can't make it be smaller. It's a big beast, and it won't get into its cage. And so when I show up and I'm like, yeah, I've had all these kinds of people on there. I don't even keep track of how many episodes. I just know about how many are out there, because it's not about that. It's not about, I got the resume all figured out now, right? There's nothing else I have to prove to anybody. But I get to do things like work on documentaries now and be an executive producer. And so I'm not trying to sell books. I'm not trying to create leads. I'm not trying to do those things, but I am trying to create things for people, because who knew that some spy walking around on the side of a mountain in Afghanistan trying not to get shot to death, extending his stress. The Taliban had a by name tasking. Hey, governor, have Pete and Rich come do a meeting with us. And the Taliban were like, Pete and Rich are all right. Those guys can operate here. We got vouched for by the Taliban, right?
Wow.
A guy like that doesn't get to necessarily have a giant show. I'm not a SEAL. There's no trident or anything. They don't have a badge for what I do, but I'm really fucking good at it. But what it's turned into is I get to do things like I get to meet you. I get to make documentaries. I get to do all kinds of cool things. And that's really what the Break It Down show has given me, is opportunities, networks, and just a fulfillment in life that makes me want to stay alive, as opposed to my PTSD, which literally makes me want to die.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And, that's why this show continued. I'll be honest. Same reason right there. About 3/4 of the way through season 1, I realized this became therapy for me. I was talking about things that I didn't talk about. And it felt good. I was getting more from it than I got from any other therapist. And so when the other host dropped off, I didn't want it to end. And so I then started, I learned real quick, I'm not that guy to talk by myself, because I start rambling and I wouldn't even watch the shit that I created. So it was bad. So I then said, well, I need guests. I need people that I can feed off of and learn. And that's exactly what happened. I started bringing all these different sorts of people, and I started hearing all these fascinating stories that I have really became interested in. Um, your story. I had, the show before you was a guy that is fascinated about the Andes mountains crash back in '72, and then
Yeah.
I got the guy that was all about bourbon with man, I just lost the name of the company, but he collects all these different types of bourbon, and I mean,
Yeah.
dude, I'm telling you, these are people I would have never got to meet if, just like you said, if it wasn't for the show, and they
Yeah.
all have fascinating stories. Um, it's helped. It's turned into a nonprofit for me, that is helping other veterans use media for therapy. We've created a radio station. I've got
Oh, cool.
a program for authors. I've got programs for podcasters, you know, and it's helping other people. And again, like you said, it has became bigger than me. And I tell everybody, I don't care if one person watches the show or 10,000 people watch it. I really don't, because this was about me and the work that's being done. And that's the way I look
Yeah.
at it.
It is an amazing thing. And I've learned so much too about myself, about my peers,
Mhm.
and like I do have PTSD, and suicide ideation is part of it, right?
Yep.
I'm safe from it today because I've been able to get over myself and get to help, and then work my help to the spot where my help was actually helping me. It wasn't easy, but we'll go try to rack 3 wheels on a bench and be like, oh, I got 315 today, or whatever. Like, we'll work hard at that, and we got to work just as hard on our mental well-being. And for me, doing things like the show, connecting with other veterans and putting them in a better spot if possible, and that stuff's not easy. It's hard. It's hard to take care of my own well-being with the VA. The VA's called me twice while we were talking because I got a surgery tomorrow. But I've been able to put together a little safety plan around myself, But I lost my brother in 2021, a veteran to suicide, and I've worked hard on the veteran suicide thing. And so I'm thankful for the show because it does make me want to live. And any veteran who's out there thinking about these kind of things, there is help. And if you treat it like it's your main job is to get well and survive, I'm here to tell you, you can thrive. And
Yep.
I feel great. My life is very stable now from where it was. And I'm not living on a bunch of trap doors that are about to open. And my life could be over because, a stupid parking ticket throws me over the edge, or I
Yep.
get into a fight because I'm always in the red, right? I don't live like that anymore. And I don't have to take a bunch of drugs to do it either, right? I do it through a variety of means. If I get really sad and despondent, which I do all the time, I can do things like go for a swim. If I go swim 2 miles, I don't feel bad when I get out of the pool. I feel great, and my body's all beat up, so it's not like I'm like, oh man, I'm just like this like Joe Jock athletic guy anymore. Right? Like, my body hurts. I gotta swim in a very specific way. But when I get out of the pool, man, I feel like $1,000,000. It's a therapy, it's a meditation. And so anybody who's thinking about that, I can tell you, like, I have felt horrible and wanted to die. And every day I have that storm
Yeah.
every day. But I can manage it. I can manage it now. Well, for now, right? We'll see what happens. But I'm very comfortable with my own demise, but I also don't want it to happen because I have a very solid life and it's taken a lot of work.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. That's what I've kind of learned. You can't really start doing the healing if the pressure is here.
Yeah.
If you barely have your head above water, at that point, you can't really put the work in to fix your problems. You've got
Yeah.
to first be able to make room for you to be able to deal with the things that you're going to go through. And
Yeah.
these last, I don't know, probably 20 months or so, I finally got to that point where
Yeah.
I start working on things, and that again, that didn't come from anything other than I was releasing stuff and making room internally for me to then. I came across a really great group therapy group. It's called the Warriors Way Mindset, and it allowed me to actually take a deep look at myself and learn some things about myself that I probably didn't want to learn. And
Yeah.
then it put me to the point where now I can start dealing with the mistakes that I made back then and the damages that I've done from back then, because I'm not to the point where I'm ready to explode anymore. I've made that room to deal with the unpleasantcy. So I think it's important that like you said, the key is to keep the veterans talking, or keeping the person talking. It doesn't have to be a veteran, but as long as you keep them talking,
Right.
and they live another day, eventually that's
Yeah.
a day closer to them finding the help that works for them, because everybody's
Yeah.
different.
And if you have someone in your life who you are worried about, way before it gets too late, don't ask someone who's keeping their head above water. Don't ask them to reach out.
Yeah.
Believe me, they're busy.
Yeah.
You have to be the one that reaches out, and reach out way before then.
Yeah.
Like I've got a friend that's going through a divorce. I've talked to him more in the last couple of weeks than I have in years, because he needs a friend. He needs to know that, hey, you got someone, and then I'm just giving him common advice that we all give to each other when we go through a divorce, right? But to him, it's gold, and so we talk a lot, and that's okay. And I've got people that I don't know that are veterans, and I'm like, hey, I'm just going to continue to be here. I don't need to do everything for you, but if you go work with the VSO, you will get on a path, and your benefits will get better.
Yep.
But it's going to be frustrating. I'm frustrated right now. I got this stupid surgery tomorrow. Can't even get a pair of crutches, right? So you're going to have frustrations, but I'm going to do it with you, and you have someone there, an advocate, who will get you towards me. So if you're trying to help someone, extend grace, continue to extend grace. And if you need to have boundary, push back and say, hey, this is a spot where you have to do you. I'm going to do me. And then I'll check back in with you. But that's, don't ask someone who's struggling to stay alive to take the time to call you.
Yeah.
Call them.
Yeah, because at that point, they're now to the point where they don't want to talk.
Yeah.
They just want the immediate problem to go away. And that's one way to do it. So,
and they look at the phone, because I've done this. They look at the phone and they get mad at it because no one's called them. Nobody cares about
Oh,
them.
yeah.
They tell themselves a lie.
Yep.
And so
I've done that.
Call someone. Yeah.
I sometimes still catch myself doing things like that. And then I have to step back and say, is that really the situation? Or is that just the way my health is turning it and trying to put me back down that road?
It's true. Yeah.
It takes time to get to that point where you can stop and relook at things, because I can tell you 2 years ago, I would be right there agreeing with it. Yeah, my wife can't stand me. Every time we talk, she gets mad. And it's me perceiving everything that way. That's not the reality. It's just that's what I want. That's what myself wants to tell myself to justify why I hate myself. And man, it is an evil road to go down, man, because it just constantly messes with you. And you don't know how to get out of it. It's like, I relate it to, depression and PTSD. I relate it to, like, when you see in the movies, they'll open up a door, and when they walk through it, they're back in the room that they just left. Then they walk over and they open that next door, and they're back in that room that they just left again. And you're like, holy shit, there's no way out of this. So, and that's the way it gets to.
One of the things that I use when I explain this stuff, and then I'll be quiet and let you wrap it up. But if you could see your own or someone else's mental wound on their leg, you'd be like, oh my God, sit down, let me take care of you. Do you need a cold compress? And you would treat them differently. Like, we all learn how to deal with, like, immediate care, right? It's the same kind of thing. Slow down. You go, oh my God, you all right? How things going? And whatever stuff comes out of them is the stuff that comes out of a wound.
Yep.
And so let that stuff come out, and let it just fly out, and just wipe it off and be like, all right, anyhow, back to you, and learn how to deal with it, because you can't understand. And we're all good at hiding that stuff. Look, we're all stubborn. We're all tough. I don't want to get my ankle fixed tomorrow, right? But I know I have to. But I'm like, I'll walk it off. No, it broke in a lot of places. You got to get it fixed, man. All right, so I'm going to do it, right? But it took me a long time to get over that stuff, to get over myself, to push my ego aside and say, take care of Pete. And that means accepting that I got hurt in combat, and that I get to have these things. We've all agreed. The VA agrees. As much as I got to fight those guys, they agree that I've got hurt. And so we all can do these things. That's my thing to say, man. And listen, I appreciate you having me on. It's been awesome talking with you.
Absolutely.
Just unguarded conversations are great.
Yeah. And Man, that's another thing. I love the podcasting world because you can get more than 30 seconds before somebody scrolls, you can get the whole story and everything else. And that's what I love about it. So,
Yeah.
well, if you want, man, I'll bring you forward and give you the opportunity to tell everybody about your links and
Sure.
any place that you want them to find you.
Yeah. If you want to engage with me, Pete A. Turner on social media, probably at Twitter or on Facebook is the best place to find me. You can email me, pete@breakitdownshow.com. If you see another email address, it's going to go to that one anyhow. So pete@breakitdownshow.com. My nonprofit is the Ground Truth Center, groundtruthcenter.org. And that's where we're trying to shrink that gap between policy and practitioner. And you can look, if you want to go watch the Break It Down show, just type in Pete A. Turner on YouTube, and Break It Down show should come up somewhere near the top 50 responses, sometimes less, sometimes more. But we have all kinds of interesting people there. There's about 2,000 episodes. Enjoy yourself. Thank you all very much for listening. I appreciate you guys' time.
All right, man. Well, I'm gonna throw you in the back room real quick, and I'll throw my exit video out, and then I'll be with you in a few seconds.
Okay.
All right, man. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you.
All right, man. And this has been a great talk because it has brought me back to more so towards the end of my deployments. Because a lot of the stuff that we talked about was similar things that I was seeing as well. So I can vouch for a lot of the stuff that he said. These were the problems that we were encountering against ourselves and against other people. It's awesome that he's got a show and he's breaking this stuff down as the name says. He's doing great things with his nonprofit. I've never seen anybody go at things this way, but I can tell you the need is there. There's a lot of different things like policies that affect the way we operate, and it can hinder the mission and the well-being of the soldiers. And that's all I care about anymore. I don't care about the political side or why we're over there. I would rather see everybody back here and never be over there. But if we have to be there, I want them to be safe and I want them to be successful. And I want everybody to come back that can come back. So, hey, I appreciate all you guys that are listening, everybody that reaches out to me, a like, a share, everything that you guys do. Oh, man, I love all y'all. I appreciate it. I hope to see y'all next week. Remember, don't let the day kick your ass. Kick its ass.